Are you an expert looking for ways to build your business? Do you have an important message that you know is going to impact the lives of others? Do you want to learn from some of the leading experts in a variety of industries on how to position your message, grow your business, and increase your revenues? Then you're in the right place with Power Up for Profits. And I want to say welcome, everybody. This is Kathleen Gage with Power Up for Profits podcast. And today it is my distinct pleasure to interview a woman who's very niched in her market and her approach to podcasting. And this is for the segment, What a Host Wants. And we're going to find out from Amelia Roberts' point of view, her perspective, what it is she looks for in the guests that she interviews for her show, The Business of Nursing. Her show is very, very specific to those in the nursing industry, and she started her show because it was really an underserved market, and she wanted to make sure that nurses got the visibility that they deserve, and also the industry got the exposure and the credibility, if you will, that it definitely deserves. So with that, Amelia, great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you bet. So why don't you tell us about your show? When did you start the show? Give more detail as to why you started your show.
Sure. So I started my show because I'm an introvert. However, humans are interesting to me. No surprise. I went to school for nursing, and I noticed, like, as I started my own business, I was reaching out and talking to people, and a lot of them were nurses. They're in the profession. I would ask them questions about how they ended up doing what it is that they do, and so many times I said, you know what, I wish I hit press record after our conversations. So I started pressing record. I started, deciding to ask, people to come on because I want to have our first conversation recorded for a podcast versus, recording it later and then trying to recreate, the special things that happen. So, it sort of started out because of that. I wanted to share stories of nurses who are doing interesting things. And then it sort of developed into wanting for nurses to see what else is out there for them. Because, a lot of times they're in the hospital. They're not quite sure what's happening outside of the hospital walls. After they get off of a long shift, they're going home to take care of their families. So they're not necessarily aware of what all is happening. And I just wanted to start to interview different people so that they could start to see different options for them. If they want to make a career pivot, that's fine. Nothing to feel guilty about. Here's something that you can do. Here's somebody who made a career pivot. Here's somebody who could help you if you decide to pivot. I interviewed a bookkeeper or an accountant one time. A lot of people who are thinking about becoming a health coach or health consultant or legal nurse consultant, and they're not really great with numbers. And they're like, what will I do with the numbers? Here's a bookkeeper and she can help you take care of that. So don't let that be the reason. But yeah, so it just started out of the desire to share the rich conversations I was having.
Excellent. Now, do you only interview nurses, or now I know you said you interviewed a bookkeeper, but within the health profession, is it only nurses, or do you go beyond that?
I definitely go beyond that. I've had a bookkeeper. I have had a patient advocate, a lady. She's a professional blogger. She earns her money with her blog and her presence as a patient advocate. I've interviewed somebody who does sales and marketing automation. But to answer your question, yes, I love for my my community to know, again, of the resources and things that they may not come across during their shift at the hospital.
Okay. And now when you look for somebody to interview, oftentimes I'm sure people approach you and they say, hey, I want to be on your show. What this segment is really about is, from your perspective as a host, what do you look for when somebody reaches out to you? And the second question, we'll go deeper into it, but what really kind of turns you off and makes you realize this is not a good fit for my show? So let's start with what you look for.
So I want to know if somebody can serve my audience. I think that's like a pretty common across the board with most podcast hosts, is like, can you help nurses elevate their voice? Are you here to talk about how you can help nurses elevate their voice? Are you here to talk about how to make a career pivot? Are you here to share about a career pivot that you made, like you're in a supposed to career? A lot of nurses, teachers, lawyers you're supposed to be that for your entire life and never ever change. And if you want to stop being a lawyer, that's a bad thing. So were you in a quote supposed to career and now you're doing something else that could benefit my audience? Are you, of course, doing something different in healthcare that's not the traditional role that could serve my audience? Definitely, can you offer a resource that nurses, may not have learned about in nursing school, right? That can help people start their business or make it thrive or scale. Can you do that? That can help my audience. So, it's a very specific niche, but it goes back to, are you someone who can help these healers grow? And that's another thing. Because my audience is healers, there's certain approaches that resonate with us best, like a marketing expert who is who leads with, let's drill into their pain points and let's agitate the pain and all of that. That won't necessarily go over too well with my group of healers. I just interviewed somebody, actually Lisa Mannion, who she's a marketing expert, sales expert, who doesn't have pain in her marketing at all. She has like a challenge invitation solution.
So do you like what you see? If you do, go ahead and subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and leave your comments down below. What did you most like about this video? By subscribing, you get updates of future videos that I put out. And by liking, what happens is it helps for this video and all other videos to go out over YouTube land. And so I really need you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, and leave your comments below. Now, back to the video.
That's a beautiful approach to marketing that will resonate with healers. She cares about dialing into people's passion points versus their pain points. So not even like all marketers I would have, I would interview, right? It's just, so I don't know if that answered your question. It would be helpful, but yeah.
So now what's your background in healthcare? When did you get started in the whole health arena? And what really triggered you to work with this group of people?
So as a digital native, I was first introduced to internet marketing in 2001, but back then no one was like really making that a career choice, at least nobody in my circle. And so I was encouraged to get, respectable credentials. My mom was a nurse, so she said she'd pay for school if I went to nursing. And I went through nursing school. The traditional roles that I saw nurses do, that wasn't necessarily appealing to me. And I knew that I valued having my nights, weekends, and holidays. So I went into nursing professions that are areas of nursing that supported my lifestyle needs or desires, and that actually exposed me to a different side of healthcare. So it's a long story, but that's my background in healthcare.
Okay, and when did you start your podcast show?
So I started my podcast show, I want to say 2017, not that long ago. It's 2020 now, but 2017, I originally wanted to start it. I'm a fan of Pat Flynn, and I love how he, was sharing his journey of getting through a certification, like the lead, certification exam. And that's how and I said, I'm going to start to share my story of figuring out this business thing. And mindset issues about that. And I said, actually, let me interview people who actually know something instead of sharing what I'm figuring out. I think it'll be more interesting for me to share with people who are already, learning stuff, doing stuff. And then the thing about that is along the years, I've had wins, I've gotten clients, secured contracts, and I'm sure people would be interested in that. I haven't shared that. Maybe I should, but I first started it to start to share and capture the conversations, like I said, that I was having with people that I said, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you tell me about what you're doing? And they said, sure. And we'd have amazing conversations. So yeah.
Well, it's really amazing when you go right to the source. And, Pat Flynn, he's one of the originals. He's, I would say, as young as he is, he's still the grandfather of podcasting. And then there's John Lee Dumas. And I remember years ago when I first started my podcast show, and I went on a hiatus, but at the start, I got to interview John Lee Dumas when he was just coming up and rising, and learned a lot from him. So it's always a great idea to go right to the source, which, leads into my next question about when people approach you and they're definitely not a fit. What is it that really turns you off when somebody approaches you?
So Because it's like so niched, I'm surprised when there are bad fits. And because I feel like all of my shows like give actionable, valuable advice to nurses, when people come and they're not able to say like how they can help nurses or give them value, like I don't want to give I don't want to give too much of a specific example, but because it's small, it's a small nursing community and business is kind of small, but you know if you have like a launch coming up, if you have like a launch of a new thing coming up, awesome. That's fine. I'm glad to hear about it. I need you to be able to share about how you got customers. I need you to share about how you got clients from that. Like, how did you end up earning income from that? If you have a launch and this is like your first and you don't really have income, you don't really have clients yet, and you're just really excited and want people to know about it, that's not as helpful to my audience. And so I want people to definitely go out and get sales and have experiences and have customer testimonials and, have like lessons learned, and then definitely come back and tell me about your launch, your course, your book, what you learned about, building your email list, and what you learned about setting up a sales page and, creating copy that converts, and what you learned about, even like having a beta offer and getting that tested with payment. Come back and tell me about that. We would love to hear it.
Fantastic. So speaking of which, of people reaching out to you, how can people contact you?
So my best website actually is Solutions by Amelia. The business of nursing is still kind of like a hobby blog in a way, but Solutions by Amelia is where I'm active. The best way to contact me, LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you guys on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active over there. And if you guys have any questions, definitely reach out.
Fantastic. We'll put all that information in the show notes, and we'll make sure that people have that information available. So what would be your, a lot of people are wanting to start podcast shows, and they've never been a guest on a show. So for somebody who's thinking, okay, I'm going to start a podcast show and I'm just going to take off with this, what's your best advice that you can give them?
I would definitely, this might be a little backward, I would definitely recommend being a guest on other people's podcasts first, because in doing that, I've seen best practices that I love, that I stole, that I borrowed. Certain people have a great way of preparing their guests. They have a great way of scheduling. They have a wonderful way of structuring the conversations. And, so this might be easier for my audience because we're healers and we're health professionals, but as a health professional, as an expert, you have something to offer lots and lots of people. So finding somebody who's looking for a health expert to come in and speak to their audience, that's not a hard thing. So, and once you get the practice of, just seeing different formats and experiencing that, when you're ready to start your own, and also as you're interviewing them, ask them, what mic are you using? What software are you using? What are you, what have you done? Ask all of these people along the way. So when you start, you're definitely starting with a firm framework of, versus trying to just figure it out and then end up giving up after episode 5.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I went the opposite way. I was so excited, and I learned a lot from John Lee Dumas because I went through his training course, and I figured if one show a week is good, one show a day will be even better. And so I actually did 125 episodes in about 8 months and got burnt out. Yeah, that's why I stopped, because it was like I went way, that's my personality. I've been sober for 36 years. So it's like I've got that addictive personality. But so in looking at everything you've learned, best practices, you mentioned about best practices and learning from others, what would you say is one best practice that people can take to the bank?
Always lead with what's in it for the other person. Always, no matter what it is, whether you're, doing a sales call, cold outreach, cold email, pitch, networking conversation, going to a networking group, always see, lead with curiosity. Maybe that's the one I'll say. Scratch that. Lead with curiosity. Be curious. And when you're curious about people, you're curious with the goal of finding out what's in it for them. What are they interested in? What do they need? What do they have? And people in the healthcare field, this might be a little easier for us because we have a process. Nurses have a process, the nursing process, and it starts with assessment. assessment of need, assessment of pain, assessment of, where the problem lies. And I just encourage, folks to put on the assessment hat, the curiosity hat, and definitely lead with that.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Amelia Roberts. This has been delightful. And the podcast is The Business of Nursing. And again, give them that web address where they can reach you.
Okay. Yeah. You can reach me at Solutions by Amelia, www.solutionsbyamelia.com, LinkedIn. But yeah, the blog, the podcast is over at thebusinessofnursing.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time, and it's been delightful.
Okay. Thank you.